Night gathers slowly over the Mediterranean, not as darkness alone, but as a weight pressing upon the human heart. The sea breathes in long, uneasy rhythms, its surface broken by oars that dip like synchronized prayers into black water. Somewhere between the Christian West and the vast dominions of the Ottoman East, history holds its breath. Men do not yet know the names that will one day be spoken in hushed reverence. Lepanto, the Rosary, the turning of an age, but they feel that something immense is about to pass through them. Empires have always believed the sea belongs to the strongest fleet, the boldest admiral, the sharpest steel. Yet tonight, power seems strangely fragile, as if the world itself were waiting to be judged. Along the coasts of Europe, church bells toll for reasons few can fully explain. In Rome, Pope Pius V kneels longer than custom allows, his lips moving silently, fingers worrying the beads of a simple rosary. He is an old man, gaunt and severe, but his faith has the hardness of stone carved by centuries of storms. Reports have reached him of an Ottoman armada vast beyond memory, sails like a moving city, intent on breaking the last resistance of Christian Europe. Venice trembles. Spain calculates. Princes argue. But the Pope prays, convinced that this war will not be decided by cannon alone. On the eastern horizon, the Ottoman fleet advances with confidence born of long victory. For decades their crescent banners have risen over conquered cities, their armies unstoppable, their admirals feared. They believe history itself is on their side, that Allah has granted them the sea as surely as land. The Christian alliance facing them is fragile, stitched together by politics and fear, commanded by Don John of Austria, young, untested, yet carrying the blood of emperors and the burden of a divided Christendom. Between these two worlds lies a narrow stretch of water near the Gulf of Patras. It looks unremarkable, almost peaceful. But beneath the surface, currents twist unpredictably, as if creation itself resists the coming violence. Oarsmen whisper prayers learned in childhood. Soldiers touch metals hidden beneath armor. No speeches are made. No triumph is promised. Only the sense that dawn will bring more than battle. It will bring a verdict. And somewhere unseen, countless hands move beads in the dark, believing that heaven is closer than it seems. As the first pale light of October 7th, 1571, begins to thin the night, the two fleets slowly emerge from shadow like rival constellations drifting toward collision. The Christian ships form their line with deliberate care, galleys aligned shoulder to shoulder, banners bearing the cross snapping in the morning wind. At the center flies a blue standard gifted by Pope Pius V, embroidered with Christ crucified, a silent proclamation that this struggle belongs to more than kings. Don John stands on the deck of his flagship, the real, youthful face tightened by resolve, aware that every order he gives will echo through centuries he will never see. Across the water, the Ottomans advance in overwhelming number. Their galleys move with practiced grace, drums beating a steady rhythm that carries across the waves like a heartbeat. Ali Pasha, their commander, surveys the Christian line with confidence. He has crushed lesser coalitions before. To him, this is another step in an unstoppable expansion, another proof that history bends toward the crescent. The wind fills his sails as if in agreement, pushing his fleet forward with unsettling ease. Between the two forces, the sea narrows, forcing proximity, denying retreat. The air smells of salt, pitch, and fear. Men begin to understand that survival will depend not on strategy alone, but on endurance of soul. Priests move among the Christian crews, granting absolution, murmuring blessings over sweating brows and trembling hands. Many of these men will die before sunset. They know it. Yet there is no panic, only a solemn acceptance, as if each life has been quietly placed upon an altar. Far away, in villages and cities that will never hear cannon fire, ordinary people gather in churches. They do not know tactics or tides. They know only that something precious is at stake. Mothers, monks, laborers, and children kneel together, fingering rosaries worn smooth by years of use. The prayers are simple, almost repetitive, yet heavy with trust, that God sees the small and the afraid, that heaven listens even when earth roars. As the fleets close the distance, the sun rises higher, burning away mist and hesitation. Trumpets sound. Drums quicken or strain. The gap between empires shrinks to moments. Every man feels it now, that history is tightening around them like a drawn bow, and the release will be terrible, decisive, and irreversible. The first impact shatters the morning calm with a violence that feels almost blasphemous. With splinters, iron screams, and men are thrown together in brutal intimacy. Cannon fire rips through hulls at point-blank range, turning seawater red and filling the air with smoke so thick the sun dims behind it. The Mediterranean, ancient witness to prophets and apostles, now churns with bodies, broken oars, and prayers cut short. Battle lines dissolve into chaos as ships lock together, transforming naval warfare into a floating battlefield of swords, pikes, and raw desperation. On the real, Don John fights not as a distant commander, but as a man among men. Arrows strike the deck around him. Bullets tear through banners. He sees fear in the eyes of veterans and courage flare unexpectedly in the young. When the Ottoman flagship crashes into his own, the clash feels cosmic, as if two worlds have physically collided. The banner of Christ faces the green standard of Ali Pasha across a narrow, blood-slicked deck. Orders are shouted, misunderstood, repeated. The noise is overwhelming, yet within it, moments of eerie clarity emerge. A dying man clutching a rosary, a soldier whispering the name of Mary as he strikes. Elsewhere, the Christian right flank begins to falter under fierce Ottoman pressure. Ships are boarded, crews overwhelmed. For a moment, it seems the weight of history is asserting itself again, repeating the familiar story of Christian retreat. But resistance stiffens unexpectedly. Men who expected to die discover a stubborn refusal to yield. Venetian gunners reload with mechanical devotion. Spanish infantry hold narrow decks like fortress walls. The sense grows that something unseen is pressing back against despair. The wind, once favoring the Ottomans, shifts subtly. Sails slacken, then fill in new directions. Smoke clears just enough to reveal opportunities where moments before there were none. Orders find their mark. A reserve squadron surges forward at a critical instant, striking where the Ottoman line has thinned. It feels less like chance than timing, as though events are aligning according to a rhythm beyond human command. Still, the cost is unbearable. Screams echo across the water, mingling languages, beliefs, and final confessions. The sea accepts everyone without distinction. And yet, amid the carnage, a strange conviction spreads among the Christian crews. Not triumph, not certainty, but a deep, steady assurance that they are not alone in this storm of steel and blood. Hours pass, measured not by clocks, but by exhaustion and loss. Arms grow heavy, throats raw from smoke and shouting. The battle no longer feels like a single event, but an endless present, a crucible in which fear and faith are tested again and again. On ship after ship, the question is no longer who will win, but whether endurance itself has meaning. Men fight for reasons that have nothing to do with empires, for the man beside them, for a prayer remembered, for a home that may already be lost. At the center, the struggle between the real and Ali Pasha's flagship reaches a terrifying intimacy. Boarding planks are slick with blood. Combat collapses into brutal knots of bodies, steel meeting flesh at arm's length. Ali Pasha fights fiercely, convinced to the end of the justice of his cause. When he falls, struck down amid the press, the moment passes almost unnoticed by those around him. Yet the psychological weight is immense. His banner is seized, torn down, and the sight ripples outward like a shockwave. Ottoman confidence wavers, not yet broken, but wounded. Even so, the Ottomans do not collapse. Their left wing presses hard, threatening to encircle Christian ships. Victory still hangs in the balance, trembling. The Christian fleet has suffered grievously. Entire crews have vanished beneath the waves. The temptation to despair returns, sharper now because hope has been glimpsed and could yet be lost. Far from the smoke, in Rome, Pope Pius V rises suddenly from prayer. Witnesses later will say he seemed to see something invisible, that his face changed, as if listening. He announces quietly that the Christian fleet has prevailed, though no messenger has arrived. Those around him are confused, but he returns to prayer with serene intensity, fingers moving bead by bead, as if sealing something already given. Back on the water, the turning becomes undeniable. Ottoman formations loosen. Orders fail to carry. Christian ships, battered but resolute, press their advantage with grim determination. This is no ecstatic charge, no reckless fury. It is a steady, almost solemn advance, fueled by exhaustion and a conviction that retreat would betray the dead already committed to the sea. The battle narrows toward its final shape, as if history itself is closing its fist. The decisive moment arrives not with thunder, but with a collective breaking, like a wave collapsing after holding its shape too long. The Ottoman line begins to fold inward, resistance fragmenting into desperate pockets. Ships turn away, seeking escape where moments before there had been none. Christian galleys surge forward through smoke and wreckage, not cheering, not celebrating, but pressing on with the weary resolve of men who understand the cost of stopping too soon. On the decks, the fighting reaches its fiercest intensity. There is no room left for grand strategy, only survival and fidelity to the task at hand. Steel clashes again and again, each strike echoing with accumulated fatigue. Men stumble over the fallen, slipping in blood and seawater, rising only because surrender feels worse than pain. The sun stands high now, illuminating everything without mercy, stripping away illusion. What remains is raw humanity laid bare before God. When the last significant Ottoman resistance breaks, the realization spreads slowly, almost reluctantly. Trumpets sound uncertain notes. Flags are raised, some torn, some barely recognizable. The sea is choked with debris and bodies, a floating testament to the price exacted this day. Victory does not feel triumphant. It feels heavy, like an inheritance purchased at terrible cost. As the smoke thins, silence begins to replace noise. Oars rest, swords lower. Survivors look around in disbelief, counting the living, mourning the dead. The Christian fleet has prevailed against an empire that seemed invincible. The Ottoman advance into the western Mediterranean has been halted, not forever, but decisively enough to change the trajectory of history. A psychological barrier has been shattered, as real as any ship sunk or banner captured. Somewhere among the exhausted crews, men kneel where they stand, unable to articulate what they feel. Gratitude mixes with grief. Relief mingles with awe. Many do not know how close despair came, how narrow the margin truly was. They know only that they have lived through something larger than themselves, something that will be spoken of long after their names are forgotten. The sea, indifferent and ancient, begins to reclaim its stillness. And in that uneasy calm, the weight of what has occurred settles into memory, awaiting meaning. In the long aftermath, as the fleets separate and the wounded are tended, understanding dawns gradually. Messengers will carry news across Europe, but the truth of Lepanto cannot be captured fully in words or numbers. It lives in the hollow eyes of survivors, in the empty places at oars and tables, in the knowledge that history, for once, did not follow its expected path. The Ottoman Empire remains vast and powerful, yet its aura of inevitability has been pierced. Christendom, fractured and fearful, has discovered that unity, however fragile, can still alter the course of events. When confirmation finally reaches Rome, it aligns uncannily with the hour Pope Pius V had risen from prayer. He orders the bells rung in thanksgiving, not for human glory, but for mercy received. He attributes the victory not to brilliance or strength, but to the intercession of the Virgin Mary, invoked through the Rosary prayed by countless unknown faithful. A new feast will later be established, not to commemorate battle, but to remember gratitude, Our Lady of the Rosary, linking beads and blood, prayer and history. Yet Lepanto does not usher in an age of peace. Wars continue. Politics remain cruel. Faith itself will be tested again and again. But something intangible has shifted. Europe now knows that it is not merely the playground of empires, that spiritual solidarity can manifest in material reality. The Rosary, once a quiet devotion of monasteries and homes, takes on new resonance as a weapon of trust rather than force. For the men who fought, life resumes in altered form. Some return to families who will never fully understand what they endured. Others carry scars, visible and invisible, until death. They do not speak often of heroism. They remember moments, a hand grasped in darkness, a prayer whispered under fire, the sudden lifting of fear when hope seemed impossible. Lepanto becomes a story told and retold, sometimes simplified, sometimes romanticized. But beneath every retelling lies a core truth that resists distortion, that history is not closed to heaven, that human choices, when aligned with humility and trust, can become conduits for grace. The sea keeps its secrets, but the memory endures. In the quiet centuries that follow, the Battle of Lepanto recedes into textbooks and commemorations, yet its deeper echo remains, waiting for attentive hearts. It speaks not of inevitable victory, but of vulnerability offered to God. The Rosary did not stop an empire by magic or spectacle. It gathered fear, hope, and human limitation into a single act of trust, repeated bead by people who had nothing else to offer. In that repetition, history found a hinge. Lepanto reminds us that faith often operates beneath notice, shaping outcomes long before they are recognized. The sailors who fought did not see angels in the smoke or hear heavenly voices over cannon fire. They simply endured, prayed, and acted within the narrow margins given to them. Providence did not erase suffering. It accompanied it, drawing meaning from sacrifice rather than bypassing it. For modern listeners, distant from galleys and empires, the lesson is quieter but no less demanding. We too face forces that feel overwhelming, systems, fears, narratives of inevitability. Lepanto does not promise that prayer will always yield visible triumph. It testifies instead that fidelity matters, that unseen unity can restrain even the most confident power, and that history is still responsive to humility. The Rosary, simple and unadorned, becomes in this light a bridge between heaven and the chaos of the world, a way of holding fast when outcomes are uncertain. Its rhythm mirrors the oars on that ancient sea, steady, repetitive, sustaining motion when strength fails. It asks not for control, but for presence. As the last echoes of battle fade, what remains is an invitation to remember, to trust, to resist despair with patience. Lepanto is not a relic of triumphalism, but a memory of grace interrupting momentum. And perhaps, in the stillness after our own storms, it invites us to kneel, to breathe, and to place what we cannot command into hands far steadier than our own. O Lord of history and mercy, receive the fears, sacrifices, and whispered prayers of those who stand in the shadow of overwhelming power. Through humble trust and steadfast faith, teach us to endure without despair, to act without hatred, and to place every uncertain outcome into your faithful hands. Amen.